Opioid addiction is a national public health crisis that affects individuals and families regardless of their age, race, or income. The statistics are overwhelming. More than 130 people die from opioid addiction every day. But there is hope. Recovery is possible. The information contained in these podcasts is solely for informational purposes and should not replace advice from a medical provider when making healthcare decisions. This podcast contains opinionated content and may not reflect the opinions of any organization this podcast is affiliated with. We will discuss opioid use and opioid treatment, which may be triggering for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
In Season 3, we'll be exploring the meaning of inclusive recovery. And today on Someone You Know, we're joined by Murphy Jensen. Murphy is a former professional tennis player, substance use disorder advocate, and co-founder and executive vice president of corporate development for WeConnect Health Management. On this episode, we discuss Murphy's background and recovery journey, Murphy's experience and how he is using modern technology to encourage and support people in their recovery journeys via his company WeConnect, and the importance self-care plays in one's recovery journey. I'm your host, Heather Major, and this is Someone You Know. Thought I'd start with some maybe a look back to a go forward. Great moments in Murphy Jensen's life. Want to run me through them?
Great moments in my life. First, I can't miss out on being born. I mean, that was a starting place. I was raised on a Christmas tree farm in northern Michigan. I had an older brother named Luke and twin sisters that were younger, Rachel and Rebecca. Some say that I was raised by wolves, but the truth is I was raised by amazing parents and an amazing community in northern Michigan. That's important to say because I believe the success I've had in life is a direct result of the community I was raised in. And in my first life, I became a tennis player. I think one of the greatest moments that I didn't even know was we ended up being tennis players, our whole family. So all of us played on the Grand Slam level, and tennis at a young age was taking me places. It was taking me on a national level by the age of 11, on an international level by the age of 13. I was the best in the world by 18 in the game of doubles and top 5 in the world. And as a singles player, my peers were Agassi, Sampras, Courier, Chang, Wheaton, Washington, Malavia, Washington. We had Boris Becker, Stefan Edberg. These were all guys that I was competing with and having fun with at a young age. And we're all children and that grew up to do some cool things. And in 1993, my brother and I won the French Open. And it was a childhood dream that we played together as a family, and we did it. One of my first calls from winning that was from Andre Agassi. And why that was monumental to this discussion is I sat in the locker room and my hands were shaking and I didn't know why. And my outsides were the best in the world in that moment. Everything that we had worked for as a family. And my instincts to achieve these things. But in that moment, I felt really alone and really scared. Would I measure up? Was I enough? Did I have what it takes? I just proved I have what it takes. And I still get those feelings today, but now I have tools to deal with them. Another great moment was probably the greatest moment of my life, At the time, I didn't think it was a great moment, was the birth of my first son, Billy, while playing the US Open. I was at a jumping off place and I was considering jumping out of a window of my hotel in New York City while playing the US Open. And instead of doing that, I somehow crash landed and ended up in a hotel room on Sunset Strip. And my son was born in Los Angeles. And I didn't think I had much to live for. And instead of a hotel manager calling the police, he called an interventionist at 3 o'clock in the morning. And he asked if I was willing to get help. And by the grace of some divine intelligence, I had the willingness to say yes. I was beat, broken, bloodied enough. And I was so alone and so afraid. And I gotta say, those feelings didn't just show up at the French Open or in that hotel room or in big moments. I think they started as a little boy. And 6 months ago, I have never had more to live for in my life. And the best physical shape of my life. And I was helping my brother out in Colorado Springs, and I was about to serve a tennis ball in an exhibition tennis match. And I smile at him, and the lights turn off, and I have a cardiac arrest. And I go back and I hit my head really hard on the tennis court, fractured my skull, pool of blood around my head. Luckily, there were some off-duty medical professionals there that rushed to my assistance. They broke my ribs and sternum, gave me CPR and compressions. And my brother was screaming, "This is not your time. This is not your time. Jensen's never quit. Jensen's never quit. Duke needs you. Billy needs you. We all need you, Murphy." And I'm gone. My heart had stopped for 18 minutes. And so they shocked me 4 times with the AED. They lose me 4 times on the tennis court. I am white as a ghost on the tennis court. The ambulance arrives. They throw me in the ambulance. They shock me 2 more times. By the time we get to the hospital, there was a pulse. They induced me into a coma for 7 days. And at that moment, with my brother and my wife sitting by my coma, and I see myself. And sometimes I'm not sure if I'm really here. And so I came out, and I've been given another chance, and I'm still here. My mantra is, I'm here, I am home, I am alive. I'm here in my body, I'm alive, I'm awake. The greatest gift of my life has been my recovery. I'm not saying it because of the context of this show, but it is. I have no family, I have no Murphy, I have nothing without my recovery. And organizations like the IBC Foundation saved my life. So
You are you, and then you are you through the things you do.
mhm.
And I don't know if you want to share with folks, like, what's We Connect all about? I mean, the name is great.
Yeah.
It certainly speaks to some of the functionality of what it does, but what is We Connect, and take us through sort of the journey, because you understand it better than most, with your own lived experience and with the people who are on your team who I've also had the privilege of meeting.
Mhm.
But you also have, you don't quit. So Luke's right. The Jensens never quit.
Yeah.
A global pandemic comes, and there's more to this story. So I don't know if you want to let our listeners know, what is We Connect? If they need help, how do they access it? And then tell us about its evolution.
We Connect Health Management is a health care technology platform. It's a mobile application that's there to support anyone seeking help from mental health challenges, substance use disorder, anxiety, depression, you name it. For me, that was a monumental gift to have connected out as a direct result of me being of service to my mother-in-law, who asked me if I'd be willing to take a family friend who was in an outpatient program to a support group meeting. And I could have said, Margaret, you know what? I'm going to eat turkey. It's Thanksgiving. I'm not taking this guy to a support group meeting. He's covered in his outpatient program. But something that really serves me is to be there for others when anybody reaches their hand out for help, in spite of pumpkin pie. And pumpkin pie, he can wait. And I take this gentleman, and he says after the meeting, "Where did you get your tan?" And I said, "Well, I was at Richard Branson's Island for a tennis fundraiser." And he said, "A girl in my outpatient program was there who you need to meet." And so we met, and she was there. Richard Branson. It has a bunch of entrepreneur programs. My co-founder worked in the tech space, did some work with Microsoft, building out system engineering teams and things like that, things I knew nothing about. She shares with me on the whiteboard, this whiteboarding wireframes, how we can leverage technology. When she got out of treatment, they handed her a piece of paper, do these 25 things for the rest of your life. And then her counselor says, there's a 95% chance you're going to have a reoccurrence and a relapse within the first 90 days. And she's like, oh my God, this isn't good because she's in treatment and in an outpatient program herself, and she doesn't have a relapse in her head is telling her. And she used her genius brain and said, what are the drivers of relapse? Lack of accountability to that piece of paper, that care plan, lack of connection. All the support she got in that inpatient program, in that outpatient program, was going to leave her when she went back to the scene of the crime, went back to her home. What did her environment look like? What did her work, transportation, all those things that ladder up to one's social determinants of health. And it's funny, everything felt overwhelming for me. So how can we leverage these phones that everyone is using and utilizing to get through their days? And so We Connect is a platform, a mobile application. And speaking of the pandemic, Daniela was genius again. She said, all the support group meetings and all the places where you can get support and services are being shut down in person. So we stood up online, actually in-app support group meetings and on the website and through the app. We then launched Access for All during the pandemic, which is a free version of the app that gets you access to all these meetings. I think 10 to 12 meetings per day, covering everything: family, grief, suicide prevention, mental health concerns. So I use this phone for everything. Why wouldn't I use it to support my recovery? So this has been an amazing journey the last 7-8 years. All I thought I had a talent for was playing tennis. And my mess in so many ways and words has become my message. The last 12 months, I've been doing a documentary film called Born to Serve, and I'm working with an amazing production company called High Watch Media. It's about destigmatizing, normalizing the conversation, destigmatizing addiction, mental health. If I had shown up with bone cancer to the tennis world, they'd have named a court or a stadium after me. It's got to be okay for things not to be okay. And I'm living proof that this is not only treatable, these conditions, preventable. Had I had access to services like We Connect, where anonymously and confidentially in the workplace, we are now serving employers. We've been serving health plans and health insurance companies and their members. I'm learning and I'm growing. And who I was when we met 4 years ago has grown.
I'm so lucky, first and foremost, to know you and to get to continue to learn from you and grow next to you. I feel like one of the greatest gifts of being the host of this podcast is certainly getting on a platform that helps amplify the message, to help break down the stigma of addiction and really dive into people's personal narratives, which is not everybody wants to go there, right? But to have yourself and other guests who have been willing to sort of be like, hey, listen, I'm going to tell you everything and I'm going to tell you a little more because you want to reach people. And That's been a great gift. But also a great gift in this process has just been growing my own mind, growing my own self, and really figuring out me in all of this too. And so it's both a self-serving and selfless act, I guess, in many ways, without it being intentional that way. I mean, the intentionality is obviously, let's get the message out there, right? Let's start talking to people. Let's start making sure that folks can tune in somewhere and maybe hear themselves in a story or hear something about a story that connects with them, that resonates with them, that makes them want to think differently, act differently, engage differently, speak about addiction differently, see addiction differently. But it's also for me, getting down to these places of acceptance and of faith and spirit and help, and just letting people know that there's so much more out there than what we're ever going to cover on this podcast. But through this podcast, you can open your mind to the next step, the next thing, the next day, the next morning, right? Doing a Monday with us. And also just take the small things, right? Take the small things from this. Like when Murphy Jensen reaches out, I never question what it's for. I don't know that it's necessarily to keep yourself accountable for your recovery. But I know it makes me happy, right?
Yeah, it makes me happy too. That's
there you
the
go.
deal. Yeah.
And I know that it's important. Otherwise we wouldn't be chatting, right? And so it doesn't matter where it comes from. It doesn't matter what it's for necessarily. It just matters that, we're there. And I think those are just some of the smaller things that I hope that our listeners can take away from any of these conversations. Is if the big thing feels too big, then maybe it is right now. And maybe the next thing is, what's the small thing that connects with you? What's the small thing that you can do? And rather than live that isolation, and that's a real lonely place to be. Reach out. You might be surprised at who you get to connect with and where that goes. So.
Congratulations on 3 years. This is the 3rd year, right?
That's right.
So let's go. Let's make this year a Picasso of a podcast. I love you guys. Thank you.
Love you too.
Everybody.
See you guys.
Bye, Heather. Bye.
Bye, Murphy.
If you or someone you know is suffering from opioid addiction, please visit ibxfoundation.org/SYK. The link is in our show notes below.